Welcome back, everybody. It's been a fun evening thus far. That's right. You know what? You're in OCE time zone now. We're getting ever closer to midnight, which means it's coming towards the end of some of these live games. And to end things off, well, we're going to be doing it with a fun one for sure. The Hawks are going to try to keep on flying high, this time against a Sengoku team who admittedly had their struggles last game, but have shown more signs of life than we may have been expecting. This game could be a lot closer than we might think.
You would hope so if you're a fan of Sengoku. No, sorry. Because they didn't look again. They did lose their matchup against CFM, but it didn't look awful. Their macro was actually pretty decent to the point where they were actually contesting for Dragon Soul. Like it wasn't a sign. It wasn't a game where you're looking at it and say, "Oh, there's nothing you can do in this situation." It looked good for them. But if we're talking about teams that are looking good formal, I gotta look at the Hawks today. We've already seen them once against V3, in which they clapped V3
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say convincingly, coming into that game. And V3 was looking at one of, if not the best team in the LJL, depending on who you asked. Now, coming up against Sengoku, who looked good, but sort of average up against them, I don't think Sengoku has the firepower to be able to fend off the Hawks. Then again, I am a little bit biased. Surprise, surprise, I put Hawks for everything. So, yeah. Talking of Sengoku form, I think it's important to get both perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
How are Sengoku going to fend off the Hawks?
I don't know because I feel like it's going to be tough for them, and I know we could get accused of having some bias here, but from what we saw from the Hawks back in that game earlier today, it was Corporal who was stepping up against V3, and then when we look at what
Hmm.
DNG was successful, it was again more engaged support against the like of Sengoku. So Gang and Corporal played very similar styles in both of their games, and if Corporal continues to do that, and if that bot lane continues to be, I suppose, a weakness against Sengoku, signs are actually going to be more in favor and then some for the Hawks. And this is a troubling sign for Sengoku, who, if they had been playing last week, I feel like Sengoku may have been a bit more the favorites because of that macro control was lacking. Wasn't the case against V3 this week, and this week, a lot more relevant than what may have been played last week. So I'm looking at the Hawks right now, and I'm feeling like they have a very good chance to just keep the good times coming for them.
Yeah, keep flying high coming into the our fourth game and the final game of the night is taking a look at the prelim rosters there. Sengoku for their game back to back. I think honestly that could be an advantage for Sengoku because surely you came into the game of DFM saying we're going to fight like hell, but if we lose, we're not going to be surprised. Like it's not going to be how do we throw this game? Da 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 da. So they're not coming into this game with a mentality of we've made so many mistakes coming in today. It's no, this is a team we have the best chance of beating. Let's bunker down. Let's really dig dig our feet into the ground and see how long how can we go against the likes of the Hawks who again, they looked good today, but that was against V3 who were a bit odd. I would love to see how they come into this as taking a look at the stats. Looking at Zenit down in the bottom lane there, not looking great on the CS at 15, and the DPM could be worse. I think.
But it's not the worst in the world at the end of the day. Crash's stats actually as well, kind of been a bit of a struggle right there. 8th in terms of jungling KDA, which is probably the absolute worst place you want to be. But again, 8th in DPM when it comes to Zenit in the bot lane on that other side. Interesting that again we're comparing two players not in the same lane or the same role. It makes it really kind of hard to assess the overall looking of the matchup situation. But hey, these two with each other, it could be said that they're kind of underperforming in relation to the rest of the league, and it is a bit concerning because bot lane and jungle are two of some of those key lanes. Jungle, of course, early and mid. Bot lane, of course, late, and you'd want to see higher numbers across the board.
Yeah, and for Zenit specifically, we really have to question their champion pool because so far their best performances have been on Callista. Up till this week, their only wins had been on Callista. So as we see, yeah, most play champions. We do not want to talk about that Lee Sin game. Okay, can we remove that, please? Like that is
It's
just I don't want to
no, we
think about
can't.
that game.
Midnight.
I don't want to
It's
think
one
about
of
that
his
game. It
most
was
played it's
disgusting.
one of his most played champions.
He played it
He's most
once.
played. He has played it more than all the other champions. Those are the three most. He is now a Lee Sin main. You have to live with it.
Are you willing to have a Lee Sin center in your bot lane together, Formal? Is that what you want?
No, I just want. Look.
Exactly.
I don't want it, but the facts were in front of us. Lee Sin is on the table when dealing with the Hawks. Now, has that table been flipped over by this stage? Probably, judging by how that one game went. Dinner was kind of a little bit cold and probably microwaved at the same time, you know? The cold on the inside, hot on the outside. That's been Lee Sin for the Hawks, but it is there. I don't expect it to be played ever again. I am with you on that, but time will only tell as we hit our picks and bans, and I am happy to see LeBlanc finally taken away.
Yeah, finally getting that off the table means that the mid lane pool, actually think is smaller. Because now you're probably going to look for the likes of the Orianna. I would be amazed if we saw the Lissandra or a Galio being locked in because they were just the answer to. So a lot of room for Ramune and Dasher to play really what they're feeling. Like Victor could come back up in priority here. The Nocturne ban, surprise, surprise, we're seeing that everywhere. The Viego ban, I do quite like. But that makes me question, what is Paz going to play? Because Gwen is still available, and we know Paz is not afraid to pull out the Seamstress.
Yeah, we could see it banned from that third pick, though. So a lot of good options. Definitely seems like, you know, the Hawks are going to be taking their time with this one. They're going to go for the Thresh. That does leave the Gwen open, and it is an insta-lock for Paz.
Surprise, surprise there. And the immediate answer of Apperman running away onto the Nah, and Tussle looking at his Volibear. These are, unsurprisingly, Tussle just gravitates towards the Volibear. It did look decent today, so I'm not surprised to see that one locked in. The Nah is the LJL, you know, private love child, basically, at this point. We don't know why it's there, but it's always there. We can't get rid of the damn thing. Nothing surprising coming out of the Hawk so far. Sengoku, I would love the Lee Sin, but with Crash, I'm not so sure Crash is the man I'd like to see piloting the Lee Sin.
You have to get it away from Zenit, though. It's one of his 3 most played champions, Midnight. You gotta pick it away from Zenit. So Crash is gonna lock that one in. Ramune is gonna go ahead and take the safer pick with the blind pick Orianna. And okay, do these players get special, you know, permissions in like a tournament realm? Because once again, it looks like we're just picking in order in position, as Dasher is going to hover and most likely lock in that Akali.
I would love to have seen Dasher pull out something like a Victor, a bit more of a control mage. But instead, Dasher feeling quite aggressive will lock in the Akali. The fact that people are locking in for themselves, I think is a little bit weird, but this is the meta where the top half of the map has more power picks than like counter picks that you need. Like, and even counter picks like the LeBlanc into Lissandra or LeBlanc into Galio can still be played without too many problems. So it does make sense in a way that you secure a powerful champion like the Gwen, and then you look at the list of priority. Well, Orianna is actually really strong and she's a safe blind pick. Lee Sin is a generally strong jungler. There isn't any more of these, oh, you must look in Kai'Sa because she's one of the most broken AD carries around, or, you know, you have to look at the Xayah because she counters the data. Like, it's no longer that kind of meta that it was a year or two ago. Very much nowadays, it's pretty much anything is viable if you know what you're doing on the champion. So that's why pick ban has sort of evolved into this way. I don't like the evolution, but it's what pick ban has become in Season 11.
Yeah, and it has led to some very interesting sort of team compositions, and it's led to bot laners rarely getting some of these power picks. I don't remember the last time I've seen a Kalista get through, but I do remember the last time we saw Corporal's Rakan get through. It was good times for the Hawks, and they're going to be getting that one yet again. Leave that last pick, that counter pick for Zenit in the AD carry role as we wait to see what Sengoku is going to take for that bot lane. Jinx going to be the first one selected, and that's a pretty spicy pick. I want to see some engage go with it, but with some peel as well. Morgana kind of checks both those boxes. Wouldn't be surprised if NT opts for the Dark Baker of choice, and I would be very surprised if we see Tarek get locked in.
I would love the Morgana here. Morgana Jinx is a combo that I will talk about from now until a year from now. It is such a good combination. I'm a little actually upset to see the Nautilus, although it does make sense. You need some more heavy frontline in there because you haven't really got someone who can start the fight. You can someone who can poke for a fight, but you can't start it with a Morgana. So I love the Nautilus. Point and click CC. There is no escaping the dredge line. And the Lovers lane in bot. Finally, Zenit pulls out the Zaya. You've got someone like Corporal who loves playing the Rakan. It was inevitable that Zenit was going to have to pull this champion out eventually.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see if that synergy will be there to carry over bot lane for the Hawks. It has been a bit of a struggle in the past, but you can't ask for a more synergistic duo than this, whether or not they'll be playing together or if Corporal will be able to find some of those roams that they were able to find earlier today against V3 is something to be seen. Similarly, will Enti be able to provide that support and help get Gango involved in a few more fights than what we saw in their last game as well? Both these bot lanes, seem to have been on different trajectories, and they're set up to clash really hard against each other on this one. However, I do want to kind of draw attention again back more towards that top half of the map, because I feel like if we are going to see Sengoku have success in this, it's got to be through Paz on this Gwen, and now this sort of carry top laner is in position where they could find success.
Yeah, and this time, even if Tussle comes for an early visit, there isn't setup, right? Last time when there was the setup, of course, there was the Shaco and the Renekton. Renekton has crowd control and the Shaco has the box of the Thea. This time, Nah can just sort of kind of slow you down very minorly. It's not exactly a lot. It should allow Paz to play relatively safe. And I agree that Paz should be able to get a lot more room to play in top lane and upper men. I am very worried about this Nah. It can do well. It can stay safe. But against Paz and what I assume will be Crash visiting top lane as well, I'm not sure that the Nah is going to be safe enough for the shenanigans that will be visiting top lane, assuming Sengoku played the way I think Sengoku will be bringing this game forwards.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see more of that aggression and play and more of that proactive play. And well, I mean, this counts, I suppose,
no.
the three-man top lane play, and they already got Appleman surrounded. He's going to be chased right up into the waiting arms of Enti. Beautifully planned out. It doesn't result in a kill or a flash. In fact, it actually didn't really result in anything, but I liked the proactive play nonetheless.
I love that, and it also means that Appleman is not allowed to play for the first 3 levels. Now, again, it looks from the outside like, hey, that's all that happened. He burned his E. Nah, taking E at level 1 means that there is no trading power at all until level 3, because of course he needs to get the boomerang and he needs to get the hyper, which is of course that point of level 3. So it actually puts Appleman in a really annoying position where Nah, who wants to poke out, who wants to harass Paz, who wants to make sure this Gwen is not really allowed to do anything in the early game, can't do anything to stop it now. So I actually love that move. It also shows that Sengoku has got a little bit of cheese prepared for today, and I hope that means that Enti's going to go for some more roaming. And speaking of Enti,
no, why roam though when you can hit those dredge lines in lane? Corporal kind of coming out of the worst end of that first trade, will be able to heal it back up. However, still, it should be worth noting 2 games, 2 different strategies in how to approach level 1, both of which successful in their own regards. Were they, massive advantages? No, but they were advantages, and that's what you have to do if you're a team that's sort of struggling to find wins. Be creative, come up with new and different looks, and so my hats is actually going off to the Sengoku org and their coaching coming into this week. This is a team that might not have been getting the results they're looking for, but they are still a very competitive team at heart.
And they can use that advantage, or I say should have been able to use that advantage to basically make Appa demand pressure. But look at top lane. Appa hit level 2 first.
Appa still hit level 2 first. And has a wave crashing in at the moment, so Paz can't really go for a trade just yet. A little bit awkward for Paz right here. I found the correct sort of metaphor for Sengoku. They are that incredibly angry guy in those weird energy drink ads right now who talks about like believing in the dreams as he just stares you down. That is Sengoku's coaching staff coming into this week.
Well, so far their angry staring down hasn't netted them anything yet, but the game is only 3 minutes in, and Our junglers have had a pretty standard pathing so far. The Hawks tussle will, of course, get the top side scuttle, trade it for Crash on the bottom side. And here is where we get to see the shenanigans, because Crash could look to gank bot lane if bot lane wasn't pushed. Tussle could look to gank top lane if Paz wasn't pushed under his turret. So the two junglers now have to make this really, I'd say, annoying trade where they say, look, we know exactly where everyone is, and there isn't a damn thing we can do about it because of the situation of our lanes.
Well, power farm it up, and you have to admit, if you're on the Hawks right now, and if you are Tussle playing this Volibear, you're going to be a little bit happier about this situation than necessarily Crash would be on this Lee Sin, who would typically have that earnest to try to get more aggressive, as, you know, confirmations are kind of confirmed for Enti, gets that little vision cone and does not spot an angry polar bear just yet. So knowing this information, it does mean that Sengoku might actually continue to put pressure on that bot lane. Timing quite good for it, especially with our first Drake and Infernal one spawning in the next 44 seconds.
And Sengoku, we know, is now willing to put more priority on these dragons. So I would kind of expect Crash's pathing to go where he is now, which is on the Gromp, which has been warded by Hawks. So they know exactly where Crash is, to then rotate immediately down to the bottom half of the map. And if Appleman gets ganked, that means that Hawks get the Infernal Dragon for free, no contest. So, and I just don't see the Hawks do. I do not see Sengoku doing that based on what we witnessed last game. We are finally seeing plays around the dragons. So instead, we will finally get to see something like that, because Tussle's on the bottom side as well. I feel like the Hawks have to know the dragon is potentially on the table this early on.
Yeah, they very well might be, and I'm really curious to see what these top laners do on this recall. At the moment, it looks like Paz is just sitting in Fountain, perhaps looking for an opportunity to teleport somewhere. Does wind up using that teleport to get back to lane, but more importantly, Appaman is walking to lane. So if we do see a fight around that dragon, it will be TP advantage going to the Hawks. You can counter that with a successful bot lane gank, and that's what Enti and Crash are looking to do. Corporal already in position to body block, does get hit by the dredge line and the ensuing damage, but is able to jump back to safety and nearly took Crash with him. At the end of the day, no summoners burn for the Hawks, and although there might be a numbers advantage for Sengoku, now that teleport advantage comes into play for the Hawks.
That was so clean there from Corporal, and this means that Sengoku, if they do this dragon, will get contested. If Hawks contest this, Sengoku have to back up. They have no choice because they do not have TP. The Hawks have read this perfectly on the back of Corporal, tanking everything, dodging the flame chompers, getting out alive. The Hawks don't even have to do the dragon. Their entire purpose was to nullify the pressure from Crash's gank, and they've done that perfectly. This is brilliant macro play from the Hawks, assuming Appaman doesn't die because he's pretty damn low.
Yeah, this is where things get a little bit sketchy right now. Appaman, if the Hawks' goal is to go ahead and get this dragon, unfortunately, it does mean Appaman would probably have to back before finding that teleport in. So a good job from Paz to shove in that top lane and kind of negate that teleport from being into play. That's why I do believe the Hawks didn't commit for that dragon just yet. However, that TP advantage isn't going away anytime soon, and as long as Appaman still has that teleport available, that threat for the dragon is kind of there for the Hawks to take.
Exactly, and now I do have to question from Hawks, well, where do you go from here? And I think the answer is, honestly, you look for that bottom side play. Appaman is in a rough lane, as we can clearly see, but it's a survivable lane. So I don't want to see... Yeah, he's got the range advantage for him. We'll be nice to him.
True.
He's also on, the LJL specialty of the Gnar, but I would hate to see Tussle now stay on the top half of the map. I think you go bot side and you actually force a dragon play here, because you will be in a better position. Ramune has no damage whatsoever on this Orianna compared to what Dasher is able to bring to the table on this Akali nice and early. So there's nothing stopping the Hawks from looking at this dragon and saying, yes, that is our objective by right. And if Sengoku want to contest this, Paz needs to either roam 30 seconds before it happens, or Sengoku have to fight a 4v5. And I don't know about you, Formal, but fighting a 4v5 is never usually a good idea in my book.
Which is why I kind of like what Ramune is trying to sort of pull off right here, shove in that lave, and maybe actually look towards topside and try to keep that pressure on Appaman from being able to use that teleport. I do need to ask though. I also need to see Crash get involved. Like, where's Crash been in these situations? Because he would be the player who can sort of force the advantage back in favor of Sengoku by making a play in one of these lanes. It's just been a good job by the Hawks in sort of denying that from happening. But that's where the pressure is going to be felt, I think, more so than anywhere else right now. And what is definitely developing into a bit more of a chess match than what we've seen thus far.
Well, it looks like they are actually dedicated to the Herald. Herald has just spawned, and
Hmm.
Sengoku have said, look, a play for the Dragon didn't work. We'll make a play for the Herald. And this time, Paz is on the top half of the map here. So there is nothing that the Hawks can do to contest this objective. I think the Hawks should be on Dragon right now. Instead,
No, instead
Tussle
they're
is
looking to
poking
contest.
around. Oh, no, I
They're
hate.
going to look to
Oh, God, be
contest this.
careful.
Tussle spots it out. Appleman's found by Paz. Smite will secure the Rift Herald. And yeah, bot lane roaming up as well in the form of Corporal also came out looking for that Herald fight. And you have to admit, the Hawks, they had the map pressure that they wanted. But again, a little bit of slip-ups, a little bit of indecision. And they don't wind up getting that early Dragon. And they don't get the Herald as well.
These are the macro concerns we have been talking about the Hawks for so long. The Hawks, in this case, it looks like Tussle just isn't sure what Crash is doing and isn't willing to be like, okay, I think Crash is on the top half, I'm going to start the Dragon. Instead, they seem so concerned about just being around when the objective is being contested that's all he says, oh, I'm around, that's fine. And then Crash is like, look, you're around, but you ain't doing anything up top side. Like, you can't. Paz is here. Back up. And they get to the objective. And the worst part, I think, is the fact that they're getting it for free. No contest, no trading, no nothing. So that when the Rift Herald is dropped and they get, the 2 turret platings for free, it's exactly that, for free. There is nothing the Hawks can do to punish them for it, which is just a sign of the macro game not being nearly as crisp as you'd like it to be.
Well, now off of that reset, the Dragon does get started up, and it should be secured by the Hawks. I would argue it's a little bit later than we would have liked to see. We have passed that 10-minute mark, but it will go uncontested to that red side. And it is sort of a consolation prize, what would have been, and really realistically should have been, their reward for that early advantage as, oh, Gengo, you know what? I appreciate the hand gesture and the shot and a prayer with the Super Mega Death Rocket. I do the same thing when going for snipe shots. I mimic the shot as well on camera, but didn't really work out that time as Appaman could be in a bit of trouble right here. NT's going to make his way, but conveniently timed minions stop any dredge line from being thrown.
Yeah, and I actually really like this lane swap here from Sengoku. They've looked at the matchup. They said, look, Jinx needs 2 to 3 items before she's relevant. The Xayah Rakan duo need maybe 1 or 2. So instead of allowing Xayah Rakan to really push around, they've rotated to the top half of the map here because there's no objectives worth taking. So what you can look here for Sengoku is another gank attempt by Crash, but this time they've got the Rift Herald. So if they're able to make this one work, it's going to be great. But look at the way that Corporal and Zenix are playing this. I think they know what's up. I think they can smell it a mile away, and it is an ugly smell.
Yeah, I mean, Nautilus spends all of his time, rolling around in seaweed and stuff, and probably doesn't smell very nice. Have you been to a dock or underneath a pier and had a whiff
Sadly,
down there?
yes. It's
Yeah,
bad.
it's not a good smell. Not a great smell, and I don't think Corporal playing Rakan. Rakan is someone who seems a little bit vain, probably, cares about sights and smells and all that. Could sniff that one a mile away.
Yeah, but I'm also... Sorry, Sengoku's gameplay is kind of confusing me here. They lane swapped, attempted to gank, failed, and they've immediately lane swapped back here. So this is clearly a Rift Herald play attempt that must work. You cannot not have this Herald get some turret platings, and now with the early recall from Upperman, yeah, they're going to get Rift Herald charge here. It's a bit weird the way it was pulled off, but I think it was just to avoid the contention. They didn't want Zenit and Corporal to be able to try and fight them for the Rift Herald plates.
Yeah, that said, Zenit and Corporal will get back to lane just in time to start to see it fall. Not the end of the world. Meanwhile, up top, Paz continuing to kind of put more pressure down on that top side. Lanes have returned to normal. No real neutral objective for a little while yet. Action on this game, very slow. Again, much more of a chess match. Sengoku sometimes sort of playing that proactive role more often than not, but the Hawks have had their key plays as well. Case in point, a little bit of invade from Tussle will get spotted out by Crash, and perhaps we actually finally see a bit of a scrap. Nope, not willing to go in. Crash just lets Tussle walk away.
Yeah, Crash not feeling comfortable there. And again, I think it's partly Ramune doesn't have the damage output. Look at the itemization of this Orianna. They've gone for the tier, which for some builds is standard if you go for the Rift Maker. But what Ramune is, I must say, I'm not a huge fan of it, is they're going for the double mana combo. Now, again, it's not bad. I don't want to ever sell this illusion that going for the Lost Chapter item in the tier is a bad idea. But the theory behind the tier, the Goddess, is it allows you to go for something that isn't a Lost Chapter mythic on an Orianna, like a Rocket Belt if you're feeling confident, or, in this case, a Rift Maker is a lot more standard. So I'm just thinking it's a little bit inefficient, and it means that Ramune can't fight in the middle lane unless there is a serious numbers advantage, or Dasher is at like half health before the fight realistically starts. And I just don't see Dasher falling that much health that early.
It's going to be tough to find that pick onto Dasher. Like, you'll need that crowd control. You'll need that dredge line or depth charge. Essentially, you would need Enti to be there if they're going to be able to kind of find that catch onto Dasher. And you'd probably need Gango or at least Crash as well for that extra damage. Instead, this is more likely what you're going to see. The Shockwave buys sometimes, but Dasher's willing to flash over the wall. First blood secured in a nice solo play, but it's being returned up top. Appaman is mega, but is about to lose it. Has to burn flash to escape Paz.
The fact that we have first blood in 14 minutes is a hell of a thing to say this game is a macro game to the extreme between these two teams here. Let's take a quick look at this. So this is just straight up Ramune not having the damage and overstaying their welcome. That is nothing more than just overstaying, not realizing that is a level 11 Akali TPing back into your lane. Dash is saying, thanks for the blue buff, I appreciate it.
You're saying they overstayed their welcome. That was a full health Orianna. That was 100-0. I mean, if you're not welcome, then when are you welcome? And I suppose the answer is when you go back and build more MR and more items to actually be able to contest, because that was absolutely disgusting by Dasher.
Welcome to the League of Assassins. The assassin has one item or half an item over you. You're dead. You just don't know it yet. And that's exactly what happened for Ramune. Didn't realize that Dasher was coming back into the lane, hungry for that first blood. And the fact that it is a first blood isn't going to change a whole lot. It is, again, only first blood. We're 15 minutes into the game. The goal difference is only 1,000 between these two teams. It's nothing like, it's a massive, massive play. But it puts Sengoku in a really awkward place where now they're trying to play a macro game, and their macro game just isn't good enough. They're down in gold despite having Referral dropped. They're not ahead of the Dragon game, which of course they're down 2-0. It's not looking good here for for Sengoku right now. They need to pick a fight. They need to get a pick onto something, like maybe here in the bottom lane, but it's not looking good. And I worry, Formal. If Sengoku allow nothing to happen in the next 5 minutes, I don't think that they're going to be able to fight for the Dragons when they do come up later on.
Yeah, and it's a little bit surprising to sort of see this more lackadaisical style from the team that opted for that Lee Sin jungle, that opted for the roaming Nautilus, kind of be put in this position where they feel like they can't be this proactive team that we saw in just the game prior. Instead, if the engage is coming from Corporal, it does get another Shockwave under tower, but there's just too much layered damage coming from the Hawks. A second kill in that mid lane, and that's time the reward is going to be that Rift Herald.
Yeah, they will lose a turret down to the bottom side there, but plates are down, so Gango, while they will get some nice gold, that's all that's really going to be there for the Jinx. They might be able to get a second turret, depending on who rotates down in time, if anyone, but a turret for a Herald, because a Herald will, of course, take a turret at this point in the game, is looking good here for the Hawks. Some nice proactivity coming through to them, and they could have, the Hawks, just sort of sat back and let the game play itself out for the next 5 minutes, take the third dragon, and let the game continue. But instead, they saw the option to be proactive. They saw the opening to roam, take a Herald, do a push, and this is the kind of play from the Hawks, these macro calls that, yes, for the start of the game didn't look brilliant because they were getting out-rotated and out-lane swapped. But if they can continue to do this for the next couple of minutes, it's actually going to give them a massive advantage. Tussle backwards. The ward's behind you, buddy. Tussle?
Oh, well, now runs away. Maybe went in almost a little too deep right there, but we'll be able to get out relatively unscathed. Should be able to heal it up with some tasty, delicious fruit, as all berries do enjoy. Fruit and honey. It's always a nice mix. NT needs to be a little bit cautious right here. It's going to try to find a way to get to Corporal, but you've got the flank with Tussle as well as
Ooh.
Dasher down below. Shelly joining the fray. Going to look to get that charge off, and I should be able to, as I don't think Sengoku really wants to fight this one. Yep, they're going to go ahead and let that tower fall.
Yeah, don't have a choice in that. One charge, turret's going to go down, and yes, it is only the one turret, but that is massive for the Hawks, because look at which turret it was from, the middle lane turret. The turret that is considered the most important when it comes to middle game objective control is now gone from the side of Sengoku. So they're now forced in a really annoying situation where if they ever want to contest the Dragon, if they ever want to contest a Herald, they need to hard push the wave into the tier 1 turret of their opponents, and all it takes is, a well-positioned Zenith or a well-positioned Dasher. Catch the wave, push it back out, and Sengoku are just continually put in a really, really awkward position where they can't safely contest an objective, because at any point the Hawks want to fight, the Hawks can choose to fight. And anytime Sengoku looks to try pick a fight, the Hawks retreat to their tier 1 turret in mid and say, nah, not today. Not feeling it. Go home.
And the other scary thing as well to layer on top of what you just said is the fact that Dasher now has that ability to go to the side lanes and start applying that, insane side lane pressure that a lot of assassins can bring. Akali, of course, being one of the scarier ones. And it's going to be a constant thorn in the side of Sengoku to sort of deal with this constant pressure and push now coming from Dasher, who probably, definitely wins 1v1s against anyone else right now on that rift.
Well, we know that Ramune can't stop a 1v1ing Dasher because, well, we witnessed it already. So the fact that Ramune has been put in the bottom lane does mean that Crash or NT, I should say, need to be shadowing them at all times. If we see Ramune pushed up with no one on that half of the map with them, that I believe is just straight up a macro mistake that should not be being made by a team that we know can play from behind. Looks good, decent when they play from behind, like Sengoku. So they shouldn't be alien to this idea. And you can see them now as a unit punching their way towards the third dragon of the game.
Yeah, that's something that the Hawks, I think, are definitely going to be hunting for right now. They have got themselves a little bit split up with Appleman as well as Dasher on that bot side. The rest of the team more towards the mid. Crash getting a bit of poke over the wall. It's not going to go crazy with that engage. As Crash and Enti stay on that front line, but that's the one you got to be careful for. Enti trying to find a flank, instead finds a control ward. Meanwhile, Enti now trying to get to Zenith, who might be a little out of position. There's the depth charge. It does warrant a Feather Storm. Not going to catch anyone on the recall, but it is a very important ultimate. No longer available for Zenith and the Hawks. Dasher still looking for that flank. Nearly spots out Crash. Opts not to go for it just yet. Dragon's going to be dragged out, and absolutely Sengoku has to know about that flank.
They saw Dasher clearing the ward earlier, so they have to know the flank's coming. But will they do anything? Appleman has Mega Gnar. I think they Sengoku have to give this up. If they can test this without knowing Dasher where Dasher is, it's going to end in disaster.
Yeah, they do the smart thing and let it go. They could not afford to just have Dasher absolutely run all over the top of them. However, they did get some mid pressure, and they nearly catch Appleman actually out of position. Crash, it was a safe play. They don't get the pick, but that's the best look that they're probably going to get in that situation.
Yeah, and I like the trigger discipline we saw out of them. Again, this is a team that knows how to play from behind, and I must say I like seeing them play from behind. Not because I like watching them lose, but because it's showing how smart they are as a team. Yes, it sucks to fall behind, but if you as a team can know how to play when you're behind, how not to make silly mistakes, how to actually clear, and how to know this objective is not worth dying for, that is the sign of a smart decision-making team. And I must say, I love watching a team who knows when to fight and when to run. And in this case, Sengoku, in that particular situation, had no choice but to run, because if they chose to fight, they chose to die.
Yeah, it has been very, very intelligent play from Sengoku. The only problem is, I feel like as a team, not necessarily in this game, but they've got to take this weighted clothing off eventually and start sort of, bringing that micro skill and more dominant in lane performances to carry over to perhaps some more victories before they might be a larger threat in the league, because they are proving to be one of the smarter teams here. It's just unfortunate they haven't really had the mechanical prowess to necessarily back it up on occasion sometimes just yet.
That's kind of what's faltering them the most. And it's so upsetting to see a team that, again, the way they're playing this game hasn't been awful. And I want to emphasize that by looking at Crash. Now, I know you mentioned earlier, Formal, that an 0-0 Lee Sin is far from ideal. But let's look at what was attempted. We saw the bottom lane gank that would have scaled into a dragon if they had been successful in the execution of it. But unfortunately, the execution failed. Oh, Enti, no.
Speaking of executions, Enti may have just sort of, walked down the wrong row right there and will fall down to pretty much the entirety of the Hawks, what do we call a group of them again? It was like a
boil of Hawks and Appleman.
Hawks, yeah. No, there's a boil of Hawks right there. Look it up, kiddies. That's the truth. But yeah, bad time to be Enti.
Yeah, really unfortunate. Enti just trying to get vision, but unfortunately, you cannot get vision in those avenues without backup. Just straight up, you're not allowed to do that. And unfortunately, Enti, for as safe as they are playing, you're going to make mistakes eventually. And unfortunately, that was Enti's. Going on to the point, again, I kind of want to finish my point on Crash, because again, I know people will look at this scoreline and say, hey, that's ridiculous. Again, it was an attempt down bottom lane, but the execution of the gank didn't work. We saw the constant rotating of Gango and Enti with Crash pocketing them that was entirely designed to get a clean Rift Herald charge that allowed gold injection into Gango's Jinx. That was the entire purpose of it, and to its credit, it worked for what it was doing. And then the other ganks we've seen attempt from Crash have not been able to work because the lane states are not situated. Crash cannot easily gank top lane because of a lack of setup. Crash cannot gank mid lane, couldn't have ganked mid lane because of the lack of damage. Gango and Enti were the only viable ganking lane for Crash, and we saw Crash playing around them, but he was never able to find the opening that he needed to make this early game Lee Sin work. So, yes, it's really frustrating to see the 0-0-0, but again, it's not from a lack of effort of Crash, it's just unfortunately the execution, very typical of Sengoku, has not been there.
You also have to credit some of that execution to the strong play of Corporal. However, they may have finally got their pick right here with Tussle being found out. Enti holds him in place for as long as possible. The bear has to go big, but the re-engaging backup has arrived as well for the Hawks. And Sengoku, again, they're not willing to push too hard, not for Tussle at this stage of the game. Although, they do need to be a little bit careful. Baron is still on the rift, and the pings are coming down in that pit. Perhaps the Hawks might try to force a cheeky little play.
There isn't a lot of vision. I believe there is still a blue ward, however, for Sengoku, so they know the objective hasn't been started up. But again, Dragon, this is Mountain Soul. If Sengoku are able to, challenge it, they don't have a choice. I don't feel like Mountain Dragon is one you just cannot afford to give up because of all the resistances it provides. But look at where Sengoku are forced to position. Because they don't have a tier 1 mid, they're forced to overextend in mid, and it means that Sengoku have to be in really poor positionings compared to the Hawks, who are already ready to go. The only thing stopping Hawks right now is the fact that Dasher isn't flanking, and Napperman does not have Meganar just yet. If Sengoku see this, they should be going right now.
Yeah, and in fact, they are looking for that entry. Appaman, though, is about to go Mega, and down below, you do have Dasher waiting in the wings. Sengoku, they have to be very cautious about when they choose to make that engage and who they choose to make it on. Appaman's doing a very good job currently is Mega at the moment. Now you see the play, Shockwave up top. They think they have gotten that pick, and they do find Corporal, but that is the support, and here comes the damage. Dasher on that flank immediately finds Crash, and that is Smite gone. Paz is going to fall as well, caught out of position away from the rest of the team. Give the Mountain Soul over to the Hawks. They are flying higher and higher.
Oh my god, you can't. Oh my god. Okay, never seen Gango's not done yet.
Gango? That's ambitious. Feather storms forward, finds the pick, and poor Enti, I think, gets caught up in the carnage as well. Ramune, the last one left, and I don't think Ramune gets out of this one alive, because guess what? Dasher does a lot of damage, but misses, and now the chase is on. Cue the Benny Hill music. Can they run Ramune down? All signs point to no. Baron, that more enticing treat.
Okay, I will not be able to overstate how well the Hawks played that team fight. I cannot wait for this replay. Watch Dasher. What this man does on Akali is one of the most disgusting things I have ever seen in my life, as the Hawks will secure Baron and Soul on the back of a single team fight. Now, again, watch Dasher. comes in from the flank. It's so well executed. Sengoku, they have to be careful here. They don't have a choice. If they charge in here, they lose. They know Appamin is in Mega Gnar. They find Corporal, but Shockwave on one is not worthwhile. Suddenly, Dasher into the backline. Gango isn't relevant to the fight there. Ramune is zoned off completely. Dasher in a 2v1 holds Sengoku in place so that Paz is just cut off on his own. Enti doesn't know where he is. He's lost. Yo, get this man a map. He doesn't know where he is. And then Gango, I don't know what Gango's thinking here. I think Gango's just thinking, haha, AD carry right click, because it goes disastrously for them. So, but again, I cannot stress how beautifully Dasher played that fight. And I have to raise so many questions saying, Goku, you have played really, really well to burn everything onto a Rakan.
Yeah. And you compare that to the Hawks, who prioritize getting Crash out of the fight as quickly as possible, recognizing, hey, we get rid of that Lee Sin, we get ourselves a cheeky little Dragon Soul. The prioritization in that fight, to me, kind of screamed of Sengoku panicking a bit. They thought, maybe if we get rid of Corporal, it will scare the Hawks away, but in reality, that was exactly the kind of opening that the Hawks were looking for, and they turned that into a Baron fight, where now they're seeing with Baron, towers falling left, right, and center. We're starting to knock at the door of the Sengoku base. The Hawks now starting to accelerate this game as we approach the 30-minute mark.
Yeah, and we're approaching the 10,000 gold mark as well. 7,000, if my maths is correct, is with this Baron up siege. Appamin is nearly Mega Gnar. Dasher is around. There is every possibility that the Hawks could look for a dive if they're feeling it. But there is no need to, because those turrets will fall eventually. All it is a waiting game for both sides. The Hawks just need to wait it out and let the minions do their thing. And Sengoku need to survive right now. That is their only recourse. They need to, if you have to give up the inhibitor, give up the inhibitor. You are not in the position you can go for that final do or die fight. Jinx has 3 items. None of them are an Infinity Edge. So you need 4 items on this Jinx before Gango can really have that impact. Before, I don't know if they're going to survive that long. That's both inhibitors down, 1 to go.
Yeah, and I get being passive. I get picking your right moments, but Sengoku's kind of running out of time to pull the trigger here, because that is going to be the second inhibitor falling off of this siege, and no blood was spilled. In fact, I don't even think any champions damaged each other during that entire siege. I was going to make the comparison sort of, to Brazilian soccer when you look at that kill score right now, but even that, kind of has a bit of a bloodier history than what we saw right there. So with the 7-1 lead, the Hawks, they are just continuing to push themselves closer and closer to that victory.
Exactly, and while the Hawks no longer have the Baron, they don't need it. They've got 2 pushing waves with double inhibitor down. If memory serves, that means there's double super minions coming out as well. The Hawks have a nice and simple recourse. Go bot lane, push it in. Elder Dragon is spawning in 2 minutes. You do not have to take it. You can literally set up a death bush and watch Sengoku walk into your line of sight and shoot them down 1 by 1 by 1 if that's what you're going for here, because Sengoku don't have a choice. If they have to contest this objective formal, but we both know they don't have the firepower to win the team fight.
Yeah, I think everything is kind of screaming too little too late unless the Hawks make an egregious mistake. That's kind of what Sengoku is going to be looking for, and it still is very much possible. But overall, yes, we've been giving compliments to Sengoku's macro. We have to be saying the same about the Hawks in this game. They have played a very reserved, a very patient game as well, and they're going to be able to cash in on that reserved play first. They're doing it in every single lane at this stage, and right now, question mark pings being thrown down on Ramune, who is kind of chilling in top lane. That's going to open the floodgate straight into the match. Ramune can teleport, but is opting to recall instead, so that's going to be a tower gone. Interesting decision making, and I'm worried that Sengoku might be starting to check out of this one.
I think they've hit a moment of panic form. Well, that last fight, they realized they were building so much up for that last team fight, and they screwed it up. And now they've hit that panic mode of, oh god, we've got to get this right. We can't afford to mess this up. Do we want to go now? How are we going to do it? Like, you're asking 1.5 million questions. You have 30 seconds to answer 1 million questions. That's not fair. There's no way you can do something like that. So Sengoku are trying to work out when is the best time to go for that final fight. And I don't know if there is one, because you have 10 seconds before the Hawks stop sieging you, and 10 seconds till you realize, crap, The Elder is up, the Hawks are going there, and they could just be waiting in a bush. There is nothing stopping the Hawks from just setting up a death bush exactly like what they're doing right now. Upman with Mega Gnar available can just bully them out. This is rough.
Yeah, you're in a situation where, unfortunately, Sengoku, if they're going to want to stop this, they've got to send it. And that's exactly what Crash is looking to do. Funnily enough, crashing is usually what happens when you send it, but still going to be looking for that way in. Dasher down below. It's going to be on that flank, but needs to get back involved and now go straight after Gengo, who is able to avoid the initial burst of damage. Dredgeline does not connect, but Enti is still caught well out of position as Corporal goes diving in along with Dasher. Shockwave gets them both, and the damage is turned right back around. Corporal falls, but Dasher falls as well. On the other side, it's currently still only a 2-for-1 as Enti was able to escape, but re-engaging back towards the dragon is the Hawks. I don't know if they're going to be able to continue this, as down below you can see super minions starting to pile into that base. Health bars are low for Sengoku, and this Elder Dragon is still a threat. Dredgeline, sacrificial one from Enti, trying in desperation to stop this, but it's Crash on his own, as Ramune had actually retreated. A team in disarray may have just given up the Elder Drake.
What is going on this game? We just saw Sengoku signs of life, signs of freedom, as they were able to stop Dasher and Corporal. But now Crash, the last man standing, Apperman has to get off Crash. Crash is not allowed to get anywhere close to this objective here, and it looks like Apperman will be able to hold him off. The Elder Dragon is secured, and the last hope I think Sengoku had has just died with that dragon.
And the funny thing about all that as well is because of how extended the play was, Corporal was actually able to respawn and will be getting that Elder Drake buff. The only one who doesn't get it is actually going to be Dasher, who fell a little bit later in that fight because of the use of the Zonias. Don't think it matters too much, though. 4 members with that Elder Drake, and soon all 5 are going to be getting themselves that Baron. It looks like we're getting ready for our big final siege.
Yeah, and with all of the buffs that the Hawks have provided themselves over the last 34 minutes, I don't see a world where Sengoku can fight this off. 12,000 gold, Elder Dragon, Mountain Soul. You couldn't have more buffs stacked on the side of the Hawks here if you tried at this point. So, Sengoku, you have fought well. Your macro has looked good at times, but unfortunately,
here we go.
Too little, far too late.
Oh, they're going to pull the trigger with that Dredgeline onto Tussle, but again, keep your eyes on Dasher, just looking for that flank onto Gengo. It's going to go in, but doesn't make contact. That's okay, because the frontline fight is going their way, and now Dasher is able to get to the AD carry. Blink, he's gone. Though, too, is the rest of the team. Crash, the last one left standing, but there's not much he can do. He's on the wrong side of the rift right now. First inhibitor falls, second one not long for this world, as, yeah, I think Crash has waved that white flag. He's running it up that top lane as the rest of the Hawks run it down into the base. They're going 2-0 on the day. A great day to be flying high with the broil, was it? The boil of Hawks.
The boil of Hawks, and it's looked brilliant for this team today. V3 was a hell of a conquest. Sengoku was simply the cherry on top of all of that one, as this is a team that was sort of hiding in the middle ranks, you could say, finally breaking out of their shell, spreading their wings, and looking like they could potentially challenge the likes of, the stronger tier teams. If I was the likes of Rascal Jester, if I was the likes of DFM, I look at this team and think to myself, crap, are they good? What's going on here? What's happening to V3? Because V3 looks good, but they look far too human for a game with that many technical mistakes, so many mechanical errors where they just couldn't get what they wanted to do on paper. We saw that with Crash time and time again. Crash, right place, poor execution, couldn't get done what needed to be done for that team to claim victory, and Sengoku just couldn't do it either.
Yeah, it was a strong showing for sure for the Hawks, and it's a weird one for Sengoku because this team, from the way how they play the game, it really feels like they shouldn't be a lower tier team. I think there's a lot of good going on for this squad, but it's a bit of a bittersweet showing, I think, for them, because they showed a lot of heart. They did fight, and they stayed competitive towards the very end. They just weren't able to piece together a complete game, unfortunately, and the Hawks are starting to really hit their stride at a good moment, and you could say the same thing about, Detonation as well. It's just kind of a bad day to go up against these two teams. I do feel that, if the schedule had been a little bit differently, we could have been seeing Sengoku get a win or two. as we kind of watch this fight right here. This was that Elder Dragon fight, and this really was where it looked like Sengoku may have been starting to come back in.
Look at that.
Very back and forth game. That said, I do believe we're going to be throwing it to a break about now, just for a minute or so, and then we're going to come back and break down this game in a little bit more detail. So please stay with us. We'll have, everything you need to know about what you just saw in just a few moments. Welcome back, everybody, to our Game 4 wrap-up as we saw the Hawks take out Sengoku. And as big of a news as that is, because don't get me wrong, it's pretty big, even bigger news across our feed right now. We did it, Midnight. 1K followers. We made it.
Woo! Let's go!
Nothing more.
I'm not going to break everyone's
There
eardrums
it
this
is.
time. I'm not
Wow.
going to break
You
everyone's eardrums yelling that.
All right. But
Nah.
how about for this one? Now we can celebrate Corporal, the OCE rep, getting 2 wins today, 2-0. That's big news too, right? And I kind of want to
Let's
talk a
go!
little bit more. There it is. I do want to talk a little bit more about how, they were able to put and piece that together. The Hawks 2-0 on the day, come out on top of Sengoku, but that game we just saw, it really didn't feel like a game between two bottom feeder teams, and it felt like, two higher level teams. And even though Sengoku really put their heart on their sleeve, I think for Crash in particular, it just was not the result that he and his team was looking for.
Yeah, the most heartbreaking thing for me that game was watching Crash's good jungle pathing, good ideas, just not perform in execution. Again, Crash was able to was trying to get that first dragon at the 6 minute mark, something that we knew Sengoku was looking for, but because the gank in the bottom lane didn't work out, because the gank was deflected by Corporal basically single-handedly, then you reach that point where it's like, crap, our top lane doesn't have teleport, so we're not allowed to start the dragon because their top laner does have teleport. Our gank in the bottom lane, which was supposed to be able to give us the opening to do the dragon, failed. So suddenly, Crash has to reset. Crash then has to go to the top half of the map there and continue hard farming because the bottom lane is the only lane he was allowed to play around because they're the lanes with the only setup for the Lee Sin. So then they were forced to pull out some really, I'm going to call it janky shenanigans with the lane swappings that we saw right after the failed dragon, with the Rift Herald where we saw them go top lane and we saw them go bot lane and finally decide to drop the Herald. It was very janky play, but it was the only one where they could reliably get Gango's Jinx, the gold income from the turret plates that they needed. So again, it wasn't the best game from Crash in terms of mechanics, in terms of scoreline, but what they were trying to perform from the side of Sengoku was a solid idea. Unfortunately, much like we expect from Sengoku, execution was a little bit of a problem for this team. Which, when you face the Hawks, the only execution that the Hawks really had was the Akali.
Yeah, I mean, Dasher just played phenomenally that game for sure. And it really was the biggest thorn, I feel like, in the side of Sengoku, and was a big reason why they were never able to really pull the trigger in a lot of plays that they wanted to, because they just kept losing track on her time and time again. They would see the general direction where Dasher was going, but then would fade into the mist. And they wouldn't be able to afford to engage and try and force plays because they knew Dasher would come out at any given moment. And even in situations when they knew exactly where Dasher was coming from, Dasher was still able to find ways into that backline and get those picks and really shut down any sort of damage that Jinx would have been able to provide. I think they only were able to find Dasher in one kill, and that's when Dasher went in what was, in my opinion, a little too deep in that situation. Granted, Corporal went with, it was the dynamic duo just kind of throwing at themselves in a position where they felt like the game was most likely already won. But from that very first blood, Dasher, who is traditionally more of that hit or miss player, we knew was hitting it today. I mean, mechanically near perfection in that play, they didn't avoid the shockwave, but they still saved that flash in order to get out of the tower range and secure that kill. And from that point moving forward, wherever Dasher was, Sengoku really had to send 2 or sometimes even 3 members to that side of the rift, and that enabled, it felt like, the rest of the Hawks to just get any objective they wanted that much easier.
And that objective securing game really started to rear, I suppose you could call it ugly head for if you're a Sengoku fan, around not the Elder Dragon, sorry, the Soul Dragon for the game, because you saw that the game was simply based on trading. Sengoku would look, hey, we want to contest the objective. Then they realize, crap, Dash is on the flank. The Hawks still have their tier 1 turret, so they don't even have to fight us if they don't want to. Apperman has Mega Gnar waiting for us to come in. So all of the situations where the Sengoku lineup looked at the situation, said, we can't win that fight. We're not comfortable winning that fight. We've got to back the hell up. So that was another dragon and another dragon. And by the time that the the Hawks were like, okay, this is our draft, this is our Mountain Soul, we're feeling confident, we're good to go here. Sengoku were like, crap, we have to contest this, but you've got a million things you've got to play around. You know that Dasher's on a flank. Where is Dasher on the flank? Have you got vision of the flank? Who is going to catch Dasher when he dives in over the wall? Because it's not an if, it's a when. Where is Apperman? Where is his rage bar? Where is a good position for him to gnaw? Where can I position where I can't get caught by the gnaw? These are all things that you have to be thinking of while coordinating with your team, trying to contest the dragon that you cannot afford to give up. And unfortunately, it sounds like a lot because it is. And unfortunately, Sengoku tried to make the contest. They overcommitted onto Corporal. I don't know if we'll have a replay of that, unfortunately, but they overcommitted
Yeah.
onto Corporal, and they do get Corporal. But then by the time they've taken out Corporal, Dash is in the back line. And that is something you just straight up cannot afford to have happen. So it was a good looking from Sengoku in both games today, but unfortunately, they just came up short in both games. And I must say, the Hawks, in a slow, killless game, to keep their composure, to not go crazy with power, is a really good showing.
Yeah, and it's going to be a, good day for the Hawks. They improved their 2-4 record to a nice, solid, and even 4-4. That is where it sits right now, 3 games ahead of Sengoku, and we're going to learn about what happened, earlier in the day in just a few moments. So hopefully they're kind of thinking, they can continue to extend their lead based on results and really throw themselves back up in that mix and sort of that hunt for the top 2. I mean, this was as good of a day as you can possibly have going 2-0. And also, at that same token, credit to DFM for also kind of riding their ship as well and falling back on that 2-0 trade. A bit of a disappointing one, though, for Sengoku, now sitting 1-7. If they're going to be making that playoff run, they are going to need to really fix up some of those micro mistakes, get those fundamentals of laning back into position because the strategy was there. But speaking as that jungler, if the ganks just aren't there, if the plays just aren't there to be made, you can only strategize so much. You've got to be able to execute.
Yeah, but I think that is going to be it from Down Under Form. Me, myself, and you are done with our 2 games of DFM and Sengoku, and of course Sengoku and the Hawks. But the games are not over. We have 4 more games waiting and working on the LJLOU. So, Formal, I think we have to. I think the saying is bid adieu, and we will
Adieu.
see. Bid adieu. I don't know. I'm Australian, mate.
Bless
I
you,
can't
bless you.
pronounce anything other than Australian. You
Yeah, true.
suck. Well, on that note, it will be CGA versus Burning Gore for our 5th game here at the LJL OU. So, guys, do not go anywhere. That game will be kicking off in a moment's notice.